We often treat the Trinity like a theological math equation. We approach the idea of one God in three persons as if it were a complex puzzle we are supposed to map out and solve. Because our minds struggle with it, we rely on stories to make sense of the mystery. There is a famous tale about St. Augustine walking on a beach, watching a child try to empty the ocean into a small hole with a seashell. The child tells him it's just as impossible to fit the Trinity into a human mind. It is a beautiful image, but historians are clear it is a medieval legend with no grounding in anything Augustine ever wrote. We often reach for analogies to bridge the gap in our understanding. You have probably heard the one comparing the Trinity to water, ice, and steam. But this analogy actually illustrates a condemned error called modalism. It describes one single entity changing into three sequential forms, instead of what God truly is, three simultaneously distinct, coexisting persons. Every analogy eventually breaks down. We must let go of the drive to master God as a problem, and instead learn to enter into the mystery. Catechism 221 defines the Trinity as a living exchange of love, one we are ultimately destined to share. So, what exactly are we celebrating? The Church confesses one God in three completely distinct persons. They are co-equal and co-eternal, sharing a single, undivided divine essence. They are distinguished only by their eternal relations to one another. The Father is unbegotten, the Son is eternally begotten of the Father, and the Holy Spirit eternally proceeds. Look at this famous icon by Andrei Rublev. It illustrates a theological concept called perichoresis, or mutual indwelling. The three persons exist in a perfect, inseparable communion, eternally pouring themselves out and receiving one another in pure, self-giving love. Because the doctrine is so specific, it acts as a guardrail for our devotion. For example, while the Church recognizes many Eucharistic miracles, there are no approved Trinitarian Eucharistic miracles. When a Eucharistic miracle occurs, it confirms the real presence of Christ, the body and blood of the Son, not a physical apparition of all three persons at once. These dogmatic definitions act as a protective boundary, guarding the beauty of a God who exists as pure relationship. The Church's devotion to this reality grew over centuries, culminating in 1334, when Pope John XXII officially extended the Feast of the Holy Trinity to the universal calendar. The timing is deliberate. The feast falls on the Sunday after Pentecost. Through the liturgical year, we see the Father's gift in creation and Advent, the Son's redeeming work at Easter, and the Spirit's sanctifying fire at Pentecost. Only after the full work of all three persons has been completely revealed does the Church finally pause to adore the three in one. Some of the greatest saints experienced this not as abstract theory, but as profound reality. St. Ignatius of Loyola once had a mystical vision of the Trinity that he described like three musical keys, completely distinct from one another, yet sounding together as one perfect harmonious chord. St. Catherine of Siena called the eternal Trinity a deep sea. She wrote that the deeper she entered into it, the more she found, and the more she found, the more she sought. In the 20th century, a young Carmelite nun named St. Elizabeth of the Trinity built her entire spirituality on this presence. She taught that a soul should totally surrender to the triune God, who is already dwelling directly within them by grace. The history and the mystics point to the exact same truth. Adoring the Trinity is an intimate, interior reality, accessible to any soul living in a state of grace. St. Elizabeth's deep interior surrender points us straight to Our Lady. Mary is widely considered the absolute masterpiece of the Most Holy Trinity. She holds a completely unique relationship with each person. She is the faithful daughter of the Father, the mother of the Son, and the spouse of the Holy Spirit. When Mary said, "Let it be done to me," at the Annunciation, her fiat became the perfect human blueprint. It shows us exactly what trusting surrender to God's love looks like in practice. We are called to that same active love. As Romans chapter 5 reminds us, God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit. If we are never truly alone because we are part of God's own communion, then even our deepest sense of isolation begins to heal. Pope Benedict XVI taught that God is not infinite solitude, but communion of light and love. We were made in that image, destined for that communion. So for Trinity Sunday on May 31st, you don't need a complicated devotional plan. Start by making the sign of the cross, slowly, intentionally pronouncing each name. Pray the Glory Be with real reverence. Dedicate the day to simple gratitude. True Trinitarian devotion rests on a daily, trusting yes to the God who invites us into his eternal exchange of love.